Alrighty, I found this video on the X. I thought it was really refreshing. So I'll pop in the video and take it from there.
Muslims to this day are enslaving black people in Africa.
Speaking of Muslims and slavery, I found this today on the Twitter. Breaking: Taliban court legalizes slavery in Afghanistan. Now I wanted to double check that to make sure it wasn't just, made up. So here's what I found on Google. Taliban's new criminal procedure code, approved on January 4th, 2026 by Supreme Leader Hibbullatul Akhzad, explicitly recognizes slavery under the term ghulam. Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me. I could be wrong. And institutionalizes a rigid social hierarchy dividing Afghans into 4 classes. Religious class are placed at the top, of course, granted immunity from criminal prosecution. Oh, lovely. Receiving only advice for offenses. Wow, that's not gonna end well. The lowest class faces the harshest punishments. Yeah, of course, including public flogging and imprisonment. Article 15 of the code states that discretionary punishments Tazar apply regardless of whether the offender is free or a slave, effectively legalizing slavery under the law. The code also permits individuals to punish those they witness committing a sin, enabling vigilantism and increasing risks of abuse, particularly against women and children. Yep. Because isn't it a no-no for a woman to show skin in Afghanistan or hair? So you could quite literally see vigilantes, mobbing a woman because her hair is showing. Human rights organizations including Radara and the Supreme Council of National Resistance have condemned the code as a testament to the failure of theocratic rule. Well, theocratic rule is religious rule, so yeah, that is a failure, but I don't think anyone's going to do anything about it. And why? Every time you have POC people who are talking about bringing in slavery or actually bringing back slavery, nobody wants to talk about it because it hurts the narrative of white people bad.
It was Muslims are the reason why we blacks are here in America today. Not because of what Christians, white people did to us.
Weren't those slave traders white
Muslims.
men from Europe?
No, they were Muslims.
Arab slave
blacks
traders.
and Muslims. The slave trade was going on long before white people, Christians or Jews, even showed up. In fact,
so yeah, this guy talks about African slave trade and Arab slave trade. Yeah. Other African kingdoms involved in the slave trade included Ashanid Empire, Kimi Bora, Songhai Empire, Aro Confederacy, Aladdin, and Morocco, each participating in the regional or trans-Sahara trade networks. However, Dahomey remains the most well-documented and influential African slave kingdom. The Islamic slave trade refers to the widespread practice of slavery within the Islamic world from the 7th century, like the guy said, until the 20th century, spanning over 1,300 years. Yeah, Europeans were what? 3, maybe 400 years? It involved the trafficking of millions of people across North Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, and parts of India, primarily from sub-Saharan Africa, Eastern Europe, and the Caucasus. So yeah, white people were enslaved too. Scale and duration. The trade lasted from the early Islamic era through the Ottoman period and into the 20th century. And then the British Empire came around and convinced them to start abolishing slavery, with estimates of enslaved Africans ranging from 6 million to as high as 17 million. Demographics: unlike the Atlantic trade, which favored male laborers, the Islamic slave trade had a higher female-to-male ratio, with roughly 2 females for every 1 male. Women were often used as concubines, domestic servants, or in SS roles. Roles of slaves. Slaves served in diverse roles: domestic workers, soldiers, notably the Mamluks, porters, cooks, eunuchs. Yeah, eunuchs are where they get the snippety snip. Some rose to powerful positions such as military leaders or administrators. Legal and religious framework. While Islamic law, Sharia, regulated slavery and prohibited enslaving Muslims, oh, that's nice, it allowed the enslavement of non-Muslims. Oh, gee, that's not nice. Captured in war or bought beyond Islamic borders. The Quran and the Hadith addressed slavery as a social reality, but encouraged humane treatment and manumission. I don't know what that means. Abolishment. Slavery was gradually abolished across Muslim-majority countries throughout the 19th and 20th century. Tunisia led in 1846. Mauritania was the last, abolishing it in 1981. Modern legacy. Despite legal abolition, reports of modern slavery persist in parts of Africa, including Mauritania, Sudan, Chad, and Mali? Don't know. Extremist groups like ISIS have revived slavery in recent years. Yeah, go figure. Using it as a tool of war and control. And of course, Afghanistan legalized slavery too. Controversy. The term Islamic slave trade is debated. Some argue it's a misinterpretation of the phenomenon by implying a religious mandate, while others note that Islam inherited and adopted pre-existing systems of slavery rather than creating them. That is a possibility. However, you have Islamic countries like Afghanistan that are literally bringing back slavery, and as this article says, that ISIS brought back slavery. It seems to me that it's very entwined with Islamic ideology, because ISIS and Afghanistan, they're both Muslim countries, so that's my opinion. The Islamic slave trade remains a significant, though often overlooked, because it's brown people with a weird religion enslaving black people, so people don't want to talk about it.
From 700 AD, from what I can research, go Google stuff up. 18 million blacks were taken out of Africa into the eastern parts of Arabia and the East and so forth and so on. 18 million, whereas the whites and Christians bought about 13 million from the black and Muslim slave traders in the continent, the West African slave trade. But you never hear about that. You never hear that part. All you hear is what white Christians and Jews did. The fault of white Christians and Jews is that they disobeyed the Torah. And for the love of money to make profit, they abandoned what they had forsaken in Europe and took on the curse of Africa by buying slaves. But they did not capture it.
Yeah. The Europeans didn't enslave them. They bought them or traded. Europeans had guns, mirrors, and alcohol, basically. The African Slav kingdoms, they grew wealthier, so they conquered more territory and took more slaves to sell. Arab Muslims, I think at that point, were acting as middlemen.
In fact, Henry Louis Gates has a new book. And apparently he is saying, something I've been saying, that over 90% of the slave trade in West Africa was black people and Muslims, not white people, only 10%.
And that 10% of the slaving population that was white probably thought they could save money by cutting out the black slave kingdoms and the Arab Muslim middlemen. And the reason why it stayed at 10% probably wasn't very profitable compared to the African slave kingdoms, because the African slave kingdoms, when they attack a neighboring tribe, they not only get more slaves to sell, but again, they expand their kingdoms.
And so you don't hear that kind of talk, but it's gonna have to come out now with all this media and information sharing. Everybody now can look in everybody's backyard. We can no longer hide the fact that Muslims are the primary reason why West Africans are in the United States.
Became slaves.
Became slaves.
And again, the Taliban, they legalized slavery in Afghanistan. So I don't think that's going to bode very well for Africa. Because again, doesn't the Quran say you can't enslave other Muslims? So it's going to be really bad if you're not a Muslim too, right?
And not in the United States, but in Mexico, Central America, South America. 94% of the slave trade that the Muslims sold went into Mexico, Central America, and South America. Only 6% of the Muslim slave trade came into North America, which then the white Christians and Jews fought each other over this issue.
So white Christians fighting each other over slavery, I guess that's the Civil War. You know who else fought each other? The Native Americans, because the Native Americans had slaves and some wanted to abolish slavery, but some wanted to keep it, so they fought each other. One side joined the Confederacy and etc.
And ended the African curse upon us black people. And we're free now. We were never free.
As a result of who?
Of white people, white Christians and Jews, the Civil War, the abolition movement, all of that America struggled with over the existence of slaves in this country. America, the United States did not start slavery.
No, the U.S. certainly did not start slavery, because the transatlantic slave trade is an offshoot of the Islamic slave trade that started from the 7th century and lasted till the 20th century.
That's a misnomer.
Yeah.
The United States inherited the slavery from the British in 1776. The British did not start it. They bought it from Africa.
Right.
And then the British went through an abolitionist phase and started a war against an African slave kingdom to try to abolish slavery. They even used vast sums of wealth to buy slaves their freedom. I always enjoy watching videos like that. It's always nice to see someone else with common sense speaking out against the established narrative of who whitey bad. Well, take care out there in clown world.